How are you doing today? Yeah, I'm good. So, standalone components in the world of AngularNYC. The first question I have to ask is, how many of you already heard about AngularNYC? Not a lot, guys. So, I actually going to cover it, but just in a bit. Before that, about myself, I'm Eliran. I'm the founder and CEO of eSquare.io. This is a consulting and training Angular company, mostly in Israel and Europe. By the way, I'm not from New York City. I'm from Israel, Tel Aviv. I'm actually here from some business meeting, so I thought it's going to be a great opportunity to meet the community here in New York City. I'm also a Google developer expert for Angular and web technologies. The organizer of Angular App conference in Tel Aviv, AngularIL meetup, which is one of the biggest Angular communities in the world, and a writer in Angular in depth. That's about me. AngularNYC. So, after a long wait, now in version 8, we have AngularNYC as an opt-in version. Ivy is actually the third renderer shipped by the core team. The most important thing about it, it's actually we're going to change the render, the engine of Angular while driving. Think about changing the engine of the car while the car is driving. That's actually what the core team trying to do. And I don't know how many of you checked the Angular changelog in the last weeks, but a few weeks ago, they actually released version 9.0.0 next 3, which is still not stable, saying that Angular now is compiled with Ivy by default. So that means it's really close to be released. This is a great opportunity for us, the early adopters, start exploring what is Ivy and what opportunities it's giving to us. And before I'm going to do that, I'm going to give you just a short flashback and some of the selling point of Ivy. So Ivy is actually the third renderer, third compiler shipped by the core team. It started with the template compiler in version 2. In version 4, they changed everything to the Vue engine. And in version 8, they switched to Ivy, which is supposed to be released in version 9 and compile most of the Angular applications. The important part about Ivy is for us as developers, it should be 100% backport compatible, and that's the reason it's taking so long to be released. So why Ivy? Just in a nutshell, we're going to get faster compilations, simple template debugging, improvement in type checking, but above all those, it's how this renderer is going to reduce the bundle size. And if you're asking yourself what's the main motivation for trying to reduce the bundle size, it's mainly this one. It might sound insane, but 63% of US online traffic comes from smartphones and tablets. And by the end of this year, 80% of internet usage is expected to arrive from mobile. So now we have a general sense of why Ivy is important. What I'm going to do in the next 20 minutes I have is to talk about what's coming up next. Okay, we have Ivy, it's going to be stable in the next version. What we as developers can actually do with it. So where are we starting? We're starting with a basic component, okay? I have here a counter component, which has one input, one output to set the initial state of the counter. And when we're clicking on the plus, it's going to increase the counter, and on reset, it's going just to reset the counter. And this is, in a nutshell, what Angular is all about, right? We're creating components so we can use them as a custom HTML selectors, right? Now, in order to do this, to use this custom selector, we have to do this. We're creating an ng module, declaring a counter component in it, also adding it to the export declarations array. After that, we have to import this counter module inside our main application. And just after that, we can start using our custom selectors. So I've been looking in the Angular docs and found this. A component must belong to an ng module. And ng module for me are much more than just a simple components, right? Modules have injectors, providers, DI, they have zones. They are much more than just a simple components. If you ask me, ng modules kind of representing applications. Not only me, also Rob Wormald from the core team. And I only wanted to render just one simple component. What I'm trying to say, my point is, applications are not components. And sometimes we just want to render one component without being tied to any application. What's shiny about Ivy, it's giving us the ability to render a component in a matter of a simple function, a render component function. But there is a price. And what's the price? As we said, ng modules declares for us more than just component. They declared injectors, zones, directives, providers, and many more. And if we create those things by ourselves, if we're going to render this component by ourselves, we have to handle those things by ourselves. Want to see it in action? Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to have 5 demos. Okay, the first one is going to be the standalone component, and we're going to use all those theta prefixed functions. If you ask yourself why it's come with the theta and where you can find this theta in your keyboard, it's unless you're coming from Greece, you can't actually use those functions yet, and that's in purpose. The core team doesn't really want you to use them yet. It's still not stable. But for me, it always translated to, hey, Eliran, go push your code to production with those functions, just try it out. And that's what exactly what we're going to do in the next couple of minutes. So, sorry, let's start from, yeah, can you see it, or should I increase it a bit? Cool. So we have the standard component, okay, the standalone component, which increasing and resetting, can you see it, or a little bit more? Yeah? Which increasing and resetting the counter, okay? Now, let's, instead of just using this custom selector, let's go to our component, and on it, sorry, I'm going to use the theta render component counter component. By the way, if you wondered, I just add a theta snippet in my VS Code. And here I'm getting an error. What's the error? Host node with selector not found. Why is that? Because the theta render component function is actually also asking us for a host. So let's declare the host. What's really cool about Ivy, we don't have to put this default host of this component. We can use any. So I'm just going to call it my host. And in my template, I'm just going to put here my host. Now, we have the component, right? Everything worked. Amazing, no? Not really. I'm actually clicking right now on the plus, and nothing happens. Why nothing happens? Let's try to understand. So I'm going back to my counter component, okay? And let's add the console log of the counter value after the plus and the reset functions, okay? Let's go back. What's happened? Again, say it loud. It's not updating the state. What does it mean it's not updating the state? It's actually, yes, it's actually updating the counter value. As we can see, no change detection. As we said before, because we're not rendering this component without, we're rendering this component outside the module, what's happening, we don't have the default change detection. So what we can do, let's introduce another function. I'm going just to, you know what, let's keep those. Theta detect changes function, which can really remind us the detect changes we had on the change detector F, but it's just a function that I imported from Angular core. It's not, as you can see, it's from Angular core. It's not really, I don't have to use the DI to inject the change detector F. I just can call this function, and now, let's see, everything works. Cool. It's too early for that. Thank you. Now, let's do something even more interesting, okay? I have here a service called a storage service, which have just a one function called save counter, which it's posting an HTTP request to some fake URL. We don't really care about the URL. We mostly care about the DI. And let's use it to implement the save, okay? So I'm going back to my counter component, and in order to use services, what we're going to do, just inject it from the constructor, storage service, and here I already have a save button, and it's also wired to a save function, which is not declared yet. Let's have it. Now I'm going to call the storage service dot save counter. I'm going to save the counter state, and because this is an observable, I also have to subscribe to it. Sounds easy, right? Let's see. Inject must be called from an injection context. Again, we're not actually rendering this component from any module, so we don't have the default injector. Who has an injector? The application or the component which render it, right? So let's go back to this component, okay? And here we have two options. The first one is the old one. We can just use the constructor and inject the injector. It's always funny to say that, huh? I can just inject the injector, right? And I can, in the theta render component function, send the injector, and everything now it works. It's also, if we're going to look at the network and XHR, we're going to see that when we're saving, it's sending the same fake URL, okay? With Ivy, we have a little bit more interesting function called, let's create first injector, const injector equal to theta directive inject, okay? We just need to get the injection token of what we're trying to inject. So I'm going to ask for the injector. This is the injection token for the injector, and here I'm just going to pass this injector. And the impact is going to be the same. If I'm going to click on the save, it's going to work without DI, without anything special, just a function from Angular core, theta directive inject. Cool. That was our first demo. Let's see. Now, second demo. Automatic change detection is really important part of our day-to-day as an Angular developers, and I guess most of you using the async pipe. Yeah, right? Using the async pipe. So let's see another example. Let's have we have this component, okay, which using the HTTP client to get some post array from somewhere in the web. It's not really important. It's just a JSON placeholder, okay? Now we get back an observable of post array, okay? Now, in order to show them on the screen, I'm using the async pipe, and I'm actually getting it rendered on the screen. What's the problem with it? in the world of standalone components?
Pipes are not declared.
No, it's not that. I don't know if how many of you checked the source code of the async pipe, but no, the async pipe is actually, yeah, it subscribe and unsubscribe automatically, that's correct, but the async pipe is also calling a function, the mark4check function. Mark4check function is a change detector. It's from the change detector ref, and because we don't have zones, this is not going to work. If you don't believe me, let's see it together. A second. So we have the source code of this. If you just want to see how world without zone is going to look like, I can just go to my main. Wait a second, I have something not okay. If you just want to see how the life without zones is going to look like, in your main TS file, you can change the ng zone to noop. And here, the async pipe is not going to work anymore. Okay? You're asking yourself what the solution for this problem is going to be. So we're probably going to have in the near future something called the We're going to have something called the push pipe. Okay? Actually, I have this push pipe. Just one implementation of it. It's not officially the officially one. Guy called Manfred from Austria is the one implemented the one I have in my repo, and I'm going to share the repo with you later on so you can have a look on how this push pipe is going to look like. But this is going to be the difference. We're not going to use the async pipe anymore. We're going to use something called the push pipe. Demo number 3. If we already mentioned the mark4check function, we're probably using this function mostly when we're changing our component to on-push optimization, right? And we want to keep use this optimization of on-push even in the world of Ivy with standalone component. So let's have a look at this example. We have two components here. One, a container component, okay, which holds a behavior subject with the initial stream of number 1, 2, and 3. We also have a child component that subscribes to the data. It's getting the data as an input, okay, and every time the input is changed, it's showing the new coming, okay. Now, let's see it works. Yeah, we need to enable zones again, otherwise nothing going to work. So everything is works. Now, if I will change the child component to chain detection strategy on push, it's not going to work anymore. What's the solution for it? Here in the subscribe, when we're emitting a new value, we can just call the chain detector ref mark4check, and it will work. Let's see. But with Ivy, we said we don't want to use the DI for standalone components. What we can do, so we have a theta mark30 function, okay, which is going to solve this issue as well. Cool? Great. Demo number 4. Well, another great way of thinking on those standalone components in the world of Ivy is the ability to load them dynamically, only on demand. And I will try to explain it by giving a popular example that I have in many of my clients. Now, nowadays, intercom and those chats are really popular. You know what I'm talking about? The small chat box that pops up somewhere in your layout, and it has to be in each and every page, right? So when something like that is part of your layout, it's probably going to end up in your main bundle. And the thing is, when which we analyzed how many users actually using those chat box, we found out that less than 2% of the users are actually using those. And most of the times, those chat box are really heavy. They can be more than 500 kilobytes just for the simple pops up of a chat box. So in Angular 8, the core team introduced the loading of routes by loading of module by using the import function, the ES6 import function. If we have this, why don't we try to use the same thing directly on component? So let's see it in example. So I'm going to add here a button, okay? Click me, which on the click event, I'm going to load the counter. All right? Now, let's implement this function. Now, as we said, we want to call the import function. Let's navigate directly to the counter component. We know we're getting a promise. We get some C, okay? And now, which function we want to use? Say? The render component function, right? Render component with the C counter component. Let's already declare the host and the injector. Okay. And before we're going to try it, let's clear all the references of the counter component in our application. So I'm going to go to the app module and clear the counter module. And I'm also going to go to the first example word and clear this. Cool. Let's try it out. Ready? Let's look at the JS files. And when I'm clicking here, I only paid right now on this. I loaded lazily the counter module. All right? Oh, sorry. It's not showing on the screen. Yeah, and the reason it's not showing on the screen because we didn't add the host. So let's go here and add my host. Cool. Let's see. Now it works. And everything. We just paid right now on demand on this counter component. Great. Yeah. So, last part for today, AJOCs. How many of you heard this word? There are some React developers here in the crowd? Yeah? That's how I found you out. So, AJOCs, what is AJOC? If you ask me, this is the most exciting thing coming to Angular in the next few versions. And basically, it's just a function, okay? Who's getting the component and returning the component, but because this is a function, we actually can affect the component in between. And what I'm going to show right now is just an experimental AJOC, something that me and my company, we're working to release as an open source, hopefully really soon. A question, how many of you really care about unsubscribing from subscriptions, from live subscriptions you have in your components? Only a few? Seriously? Guys, you're going to cause some memory leaks. So, let me show you the thing first, why we need it, and then I will show you how I'm leveraging the power of AJOCs to create an auto unsubscriber of RxJS subscriptions. So we have the first component, okay? The first one is a timer component, which takes every 1 second, okay? This is just a simple one. We have also onDestroy function, which was just telling us that the counter stopped and when exactly it stopped. I am also adding a tap operator. This tap operator going to indicate when the subscription is still alive, it's going to still tap the counter value, right? So we have another wrapper component. So this is the container component, which using this timer with just two buttons. The first one is destroy button, and the other one is the revive button, okay? Which destroying and reviving the component, the timer component. Easy, right? Cool. Let's see it in action. So this is our simple HOC. Let's have a look together. Let's refresh it. Okay. Now, the counter component is over there ticking. The console is ticking. Let me destroy it. The counter stopped ticking, but the subscription is still alive because we didn't unsubscribe from it, right? Makes sense. What's going to happen when I'm going to revive it? I'm going to have 2 live subscriptions. Let's destroy it again, revive it again, and this is exactly how you're creating memory leaks in your applications. Pretty cool, huh? Who's doing that a lot? Somebody over there. Okay. Now, let's create an HOC who's going to unsubscribe automatically from each and every live subscription we have. So I'm going to just export a function. Export function. It's called unsubscriber. Here, I'm going to return a function who's getting the component type. Okay. First, I'm going to save the original factory from the component type ng component def.factory. If it's looked weird to you, read my blog post about how Ivy actually works and why we have now the ng component def on the component instance. Okay, this is new in Ivy, and this is the exact reason why I can take this factory just from the component type. Okay. Now I've got this. Now let's override the factory to get the function who's getting the args. Now I actually can create the component. I'm creating the component. I'm just invoking the original factory with the args. Let's return here the component. Return here the component type. What's happening? Return the component type. And in between, I'm just going to console log the component. I'm going to use it, this function. Any ideas? Decorator. So let's go to the timer component. And on top of our component decorator, I'm going to add my unsubscriber decorator. Okay? Now I have to rebuild the application. If someone want to tell a joke, that's a good time. Nobody. And here, let's see, we get the timer component instance. We have the counter. We also have the counter subscription. We get everything, every property on the counter component, right? On the timer component, sorry. Cool. Now, let's leverage the power of HOCs with the knowledge that we have about RxJS and Angular factories. Instead of console log it, what I'm going to do is, let's take the onDestroy hook, which is also on the ng component def. So I'm going to take the onDestroy hook, onDestroy, and here I'm going to override it to get a function. Okay, this function, I'm going to check first if on the component, if I have something that's called ng onDestroy, ng onDestroy. If so, what I want to do, just call it, just invoke it. So if the user actually implemented the ng onDestroy hook, I'm not going to override it. Now, we finish with that, but we still want to unsubscribe from all the properties, all the other properties which are live subscriptions. So I'm just going to get the object keys, okay, of the component. Oh, sorry. Let me see. Cool? Yeah? So let's do it again. I'm getting object keys of the component instance, okay? I'm iterating for each getting prop, and for each prop, what I'm going to do is check if the type of this property is subscription. I have already prepared function called isSubscription. If you wonder, wait a second, let's just component prop, right? And if you wonder how it looks like, it's just a simple function. Who's checking the type of the subscription, okay? If it is a subscription, what I want to do? Say again? Just unsubscribe. Unsubscribe. Cool. Want to try it out? Now, the component is ticking, the console is ticking. I'm going to destroy. Yeah. So let's summarize what we just learned today. So Ivy, the third generation of Angular compiler, is just around the corner. It's giving us a lot of abilities and opportunities like standalone components, smarter chain detection, easier dynamic loading of modules and components, and if you ask me, the most exciting one is AJOC. By the way, if you're wondering, if you want to read more or learn more about the future of AJOCs and how it's going to look like in Angular, so really recommending Mike Ryan talks from Angular Connect. And I haven't spoke about it today, but it also really sets the ground for Angular elements to be much more popular in our development, on our day-to-day development. Give it a try. It's a good time to give it a try, even though it's not stable yet. I'm going to tweet my slides and repo from today, but if you want to read a little bit more, I just published two popular blog posts. The one is everything you should know about Angular Ivy, which is what is Ivy and the basic of it, and the second one is the one we spoke today on the future of standalone components in the post-Ivy release days. That's it. Thank you very much. And just one thing, if I'm going to stay here if you want to catch me up.
We can do questions.
Yeah. And also we're doing a lot of consulting free. If you need our help, contact me. That's it. Yeah, questions?
Are there other things you're using higher order components for other than subscribing?
I'm sorry, I think we better, yeah.
Other than unsubscribing, what else do you use the HOCs for?
So the best example I think I saw is Mike Ryan, the talk I recommended What is actually doing is connecting the NGRX store to the component and actually creating a reactive component. And by the way, NGRX now are working on a new project called NGRX Components. They're going to use the basic idea of having one HOC to connect the store and creating automatic chain detection and everything else in a world of zoneless worlds, okay? Yeah.
Really quick, I would have needed to have decorated with ng on destroy for that to have worked.
No, you don't have. That's the reason I checked it if it's there or not.
But then how do you know that the component has been destroyed?
Oh, what's happening? It's Angular. They have it in. This is part of the ng component def. They know when it's destroyed. Okay. This is how Angular rendering that component when they actually transpiling your code into their code.
And I only have access to the publicly modified properties.
Yeah.
And completely unrelated question now. Is it can I dynamically inject a host for my dynamic components, for my moduleless components, so to speak? Does the host have to exist, or can I create one on the fly?
It's either you using the default selector or you just creating the host. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Okay, thank you.
We have time for one more.
Thank you. What is this theta you used several times?
Sorry?
Theta.
Theta.
Theta character. Is it like
You probably missed the import.
What does it mean?
Yeah, I said before the theta is just a prefix that the core team is using for functions which are not stable yet. They don't want you to use them yet, and that's the reason they prefix them with this theta sign. Character sign, whatever. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm still here if anyone asks questions.